Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's program. My name is Angel Johnston. I'm an education associate at the Charlotte Museum of History. Tonight is our very first Save Siloam School project engagement session. And this is a new kind of program for us, and it is designed to be interactive. So I'm going to briefly go over the tools that we have that allow you to engage with us. To give your feedback. There are 3 ways to give your feedback here in the Zoom room. The first, and probably the one you're most familiar with, is the chat, which is you can type your comments, you can type questions, you can talk to your other attendees, you can talk to us in the chat. You can find the chat if you hover your mouse below at the bottom of the Zoom window, and that menu will pop up at the bottom, and you just select the chat. It'll pop up either on the side of your screen or as a separate window, and you can type whatever you'd like to there. There is a drop-down menu above the text box where you can choose who sees your comments. It'll be hosts and panelists, that's us, the museum, or everyone, which is, of course, everyone, including the other attendees watching with you. The majority of tonight's program will be Q&A, and so if you have questions that you'd like to make sure that we see, you can ask those in the Q&A. Q&A is in the same menu as the chat. Just hover your mouse at the bottom of your screen and it'll pop up right 2 options over from chat. The last method that you have to engage with us is through the raise hand button. And this allows you to raise your hand, which tells us that you would like to speak. And we can turn on your mic and you can give us your comments, give us your questions. If you really want to say something, you can use that function. So when you click raise hand, it just shows us as the host that you would like to talk, and one of our co-hosts today will call on you. So I hope that you will take advantage of these. This program, like I said, is designed to be interactive, and we hope that you all will engage with us tonight. I think that is everything. With that, hosting tonight's program is Museum President and CEO Adria Vogt.
Thank you, Angel. I am here at the Charlotte Museum of History tonight. Right behind me, you can see the Save Siloam School Project exhibit, which is a new exhibit that we have just launched to get people as immersed into this historic space as we can, educate our community about this space, and start the conversation that we are hoping to engage you all in this evening. So, as Angel said, my name is Adria Vogt. I'm the president and CEO here at the Charlotte Museum of History, and this is our first of a series of community engagement and listening sessions for the Save Siloam School Project, which you will hear about in just a moment. As the museum and our community partners are moving forward with the move of the historic schoolhouse to the museum's East Charlotte campus, we're going to restore it and open it to the public. It's vital that we're informed by our community so that we're able to meet your needs and expectations of this cultural and educational resource in your community. So we hope you'll stay engaged with the project and with the museum as we move forward. And with your help, Siloam School will be a touchstone for education, cultural experiences, and community involvement here in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. So it's my pleasure to introduce my co-host this evening, Fanny Flono. Fanny is a former editor for the Charlotte Observer. She is a member of the museum's Board of Trustees, and she is the chair for the Save Siloam School Project Committee. Fanny is also the author of the book Thriving in the Shadows, The Black Experience in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. Thank you for being here, Fanny.
Thank you, Adria. And thank all of you for coming to be with us as part of this first community engagement session. Let me start by giving you a brief history of the Siloam School and the Save the Siloam School project. The Siloam School was a school for Black children who lived in the Mallet Creek area. It was a log school built in the 1800s until a new school was constructed in the late 1920s, the building that exists today. And it was based on designs provided by the Rosenwald Fund. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Rosenwald Fund was a cooperative initiative of Jewish philanthropist Julius Rosenwald and Black educator and Tuskegee University president, Booker T. Washington. It was designed to build good school facilities for Black children across the South. Siloam was not constructed using Rosenwald funds and was likely built and funded almost entirely by the Black community. And that certainly is an unusual thing for that period. Siloam was, the builders of the Siloam School did, however, use the architectural plans that Rosenwald provided. And the land that the school was built on was provided by Mecklenburg County. For almost 20 years, Siloam was a school for Black children who lived in the area. It later became a home and business for the Young family. Now, Nelson Young had been a janitor at the school, and his son James attended the school. For a number of years, the local Historic Landmarks Commission worked to get the Siloam School historic designation. And in 2007, the school was placed on the National Registry of Historic Places, and it is still a National Historic Registered Facility. The Silver Star Community Incorporated, an African-American group that has been saving and preserving area Rosenwald schools for more than a decade, was working on saving the school as well. The museum joined their efforts in 2017 and launched the Save the Siloam School project to coordinate fundraising and preservation. Today, the project's committee has grown to include more than 50 members. I became chair of the project a little more than 2 years ago. Since then, many community members have joined our efforts to save this nearly 100-year-old treasure, and many have served as champions to help us raise the visibility of the project. Among our early supporters was Teresa Elder, a fervent community activist who died earlier this year. We will never forget her or her support. Among our present champions are Kobe Brinson, Commissioner George Dunlap, Maxine Eves, Councilman Larkin Eggleston, former mayor and former Treasury Secretary, Transportation Secretary, Anthony Fox, former Mayor Harvey Gantt, former School Board Chair Arthur Griffin, former City Council person Susan Harden, John Howard, Commissioner Mark Jarrell, Mayor Vi Lyles, Architect Darrell Williams, and Councilman Greg Phipps. We hope that everybody who views this program today will join our efforts and also become very supportive of our efforts. Adria?
Thank you, Fanny. As you said, this really began as a community giving initiative, very much in the spirit of how the school was originally supported. And we've reached several key milestones in the past few years that we'd like to share with you this evening. So our fundraising total goal for the move and the restoration of the project is a $1 million fundraising goal. And as Fanny mentioned, this is an effort of a partnership of the Charlotte Museum of History, Mecklenburg County, the City of Charlotte, the Historic Landmarks Commission, Aldersgate Retirement Community, the Silver Star Community, tribute companies, and this growing number of community organizations and individuals. And in particular, it's very important that we recognize the Silver Star community's early initiatives in getting this project off the ground and really getting this grassroots effort together in our community. So thank you all for all of the partners and the individuals who are part of this major undertaking. And to give you a little background, the fundraising for this really kicked off in earnest around 2019 when the City of Charlotte allocated $50,000 to the project and the county allocated $125,000 to the project. That was really the major kickstart for a stellar 2 years of commitments, including some major contributions and in-kind pledges from the Lowe's Foundation, Walmart, Sandra Wilkes Conway, Porter Durham, Hoffman Mechanical, and Mark Maynard. So each of these individuals and organizations has really contributed to bolstering of this project. And this year, we're excited to announce that the City of Charlotte has contributed an additional $10,000 in this coming fiscal year towards the project to help us move the school from its location in North Charlotte to the museum's campus in East Charlotte. And we are very thankful to our community champions, project champions, Mayor Vi Lyles, Councilman Greg Phipps, Councilman Lorkel Eggleston, and all the city leadership for advocating for that effort. In addition to the city support, Mecklenburg County has also committed to a $15,000 contribution for the next 10 years, which amounts to a $150,000 contribution. This kind of ongoing support will be really vital to the continued preservation and interpretation of the school in our efforts to share this history with the larger community. So our sincere thanks again to county commissioners, the county commissioners and the county manager, and in particular, our thanks to those project champions that we mentioned, Commissioner George Dunlap, Commissioner Mark Durrell, and former Commissioner Susan Harden. So please, for those of you who are on the line tonight, please thank your city and county officials for being a part of this important project in our community. I think it's nice for them to hear from us from time to time when we really appreciate the work that they've done for us. So because of all of these efforts, as of today, we are pleased to announce that the Save Siloam School Project has raised a total of $660,000. We are now almost 2/3 of the way to reaching our $1 million goal. So we're celebrating today,
Yes.
Almost 2/3 of the way.
That's great news. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful news. Yeah, $660,000, and we are well on our way to reaching our $1 million goal. So thank you to all our advocates for making this possible. Now, before we get to your questions, we're going to play a short video about the school, the Save the Siloam School Project, and our mission for the Siloam School. So enjoy. I know we're going to play this video. It's coming.
Coming shortly. I think we might have had just a slow internet connection. Here we go. Give us just a moment to resolve the audio on this. I'm not sure if everybody's having audio issues here.
From this baseline of this education in a Rosenwald school, in the Black community at that time, it was a springboard to the Black community middle class.
It's part of the United States history. It's part of our Black history to know how these schools were formed.
My grandmother was Othella Spears Love, and she went to a Rosenwald school. And so she educated her children. My parents went to Johnson C. Smith. Her daughter went to Livingstone. So she has grandchildren who are architects, physicians, professors at colleges.
The Siloam School is one of the few still standing Rosenwald design schools. Rosenwald schools resulted from a partnership between Jewish philanthropist Julius Rosenwald and African-American educator Booker T. Washington. More than 5,000 such schools were built across the South to improve the education of Blacks. North Carolina built more than any other state, 813, and Mecklenburg County built more than any other county in the state, 26. A handful still exist in Mecklenburg County. Only a few have been restored and are used to benefit communities. To that end, the Charlotte Museum of History is proud to have partnered with community groups and others to save the century-old Siloam School, which has been deteriorating and was in danger of being demolished.
And so when we talk about the Rosenwald schools, we not only talk about the disparities and how these schools were very modest in one-room schoolhouses and compare them to the larger community. And that is one narrative. But there's another narrative that this is something our community helped build, and we had a lot of pride in it. And it's, no matter how humble, these schools were the jumping board and the way we uplifted the race into the Black middle class that we have now.
Children attended school for 6 months each year. The wooden schoolhouse grades 1 through 7 employed a single teacher. By 1947, Siloam was no longer used as a school. It was bought as a home by Nelson Young for his family in 1951. Young had been a janitor at the school. Young's son, James, who attended the school in the 1930s, acquired the building in 1973 and used it as an auto shop. James Young's recollections of the school were recorded in 2017. He was 92. Despite changes to the building, many of the distinctive Rosenwald school traits are still evident.
And once the African Americans got their freedom, and it's good that Julius Rosenwald was willing to work with Booker T. Washington with the community to raise money to build these schools. You had money, and then also you had labor, which was the parents and kids in that neighborhood who helped build the schools so they could go and learn. I mean, because there was no schools for us to go to learn. It was just, in a sense, forbidden for us to have. It really, touches me that, hey, we are saving a real big part of history that these people recognize and are happy and glad that it's being done.
There was a note in the North Carolina Digital Archives regarding the Rosenwald schools that they asked the community to raise $196. And this was around 1920s, 1930s. That had the buying capacity and equivalence of $5,000 today. So you can imagine, my grandmother's father was a farmer. And so you imagine poor farmers, just one generation out of slavery, asked to raise, that amount of money to help their school. And they did it. In 5,000 episodes, those communities did that. To me, that's amazing. I am a direct benefit from these schools. If you really look, if you talk to people, you go back a generation or two, they may not realize it, but their grandparents or great-grandparents were educated in Rosenwald schools.
I welcome you to our virtual tour of the Siloam School, one of the oldest remaining African-American schoolhouses in Mecklenburg County. Its existence tells the story of a rural Black community uniting to tackle inequitable education opportunities experienced by African-American students during harsh Jim Crow segregation. It is a story of perseverance and resilience, and of hopes and dreams aspired to, and for many, realized. We hope this virtual tour will underscore the importance of preserving this historical gem. The museum will move the building to the grounds of the museum on Shamrock Road, restore it and use it to inspire dialogue about the challenging history of those times, racial and educational inequities, and about bridging difference to effect change.
Great. And as we are coming out virtually of the Siloam School, hopefully everyone who has joined us this evening has learned a little bit more about this project and what the community partners' goals are at this point. But this is our very first public engagement session, and the idea is that this is a cultural resource that will be a project that will be informed by the community, be shaped by the community, and really be there to serve the community as an educational and cultural resource. So we want to hear from you tonight. So please use the chat and use the Q&A to share your thoughts, your ideas, to ask us any questions you have about the school, the committee, the museum, our partners, fundraising. Your feedback is important to us, and our goal is that really this is a community-driven project. So prior to tonight's program, we sent out a survey to allow for anonymous feedback, and for those who were not able to join us tonight to give us their thoughts. So thanks to everyone who filled out our pre-survey. We actually got very many responses for that, And we will share some key takeaways from the survey in a couple of moments, but want to check in with you all and see if you have any questions for us. Let's see if we've got, we also have the raise hand function. If you'd like to join us by audio, we can loop you in through our audio. So I guess until we hear from some folks in the audience, we can share some of the responses that we got from the surveys and some of the key takeaways so far. One of the key takeaways that we got from the survey so far is that many respondents shared that they feel it's important to recognize the thread that connects the educational policies of the past to the policies of today. So the successes and failures of education today are legacies of policies that were put in place 100 years ago. And inequity and equality in education is a current issue. So people want to know how we can learn from the successes of the Rosenwald program and help us solve today's problems. That was one of the key stories. So I see a question that's coming in here that is, one of the questions is, the Rosenwald, non-Rosenwald story is confusing. What is the clear, concise answer? So I think that maybe one of the things that this question is alluding to is that sometimes we refer to this as a Rosenwald school, and sometimes we refer to this as a Rosenwald era school. And the answer to that is really that, as Fanny talked about, the Rosenwald Fund was a matching fund program where the fund would pay for half of the program, and a local agent would work with the local community to raise the other half of the funds to support the building of a new school. And our school in particular is one of over 20 Rosenwald's plan or fund schools that were built in Mecklenburg County. It's one of 7 that remain standing today. But our building, the Siloam School building, it was, from all the records that we can tell, was not funded by the Rosenwald Fund. So by all accounts, we can find no record of the Rosenwald Fund funding this school, which means that the community here funded this school in its entirety, which is really pretty profound when you think about what a leap it was already to make that matching fund possible in your community, but to support it completely outright is very, very important. It's an important part of this story. Why we refer to it as a Rosenwald school or a Rosenwald era school is because it is very much definitively a Plan 1A Rosenwald school. So this school, to the T, to the letter, down to the inch of the building, was built from the Plan 1A of the Rosenwald plan. So you can see that it was built as a one-room schoolhouse. It was built with all of the architectural detailing down to the paint schemes that were prescribed by the Rosenwald plan. So, I really consider it, the more that I learn about this, I really do consider it a Rosenwald era school. It was not funded with the Rosenwald Fund. So a bit unique in that context. Anything else in there, Fanny?
I was going to say, let me just add this thing too. Very crucial to the Rosenwald initiative were the architectural plans. And in fact, they were very careful about making those plans available to rural schools. And the cost of drawing up architectural plans was quite expensive. And so being able to have those plans enable many more schools to be built across the South. And so, looking at the Siloam School, you can clearly see from the gable roof and from the windows and from a lot of the other architectural features. I personally have seen several Rosenwald schools, and you can almost put those plans on each other once you see those schools. They are very much built in the same way. And so they're very distinctive, and so you can tell what those Rosenwald schools are. And this Siloam School is very much built along those Rosenwald plans.
Architecturally distinctive, that's really the way I would put it. So another question that we have coming in is, what are the plans for raising the rest of the funds needed? So from the very beginning, this was meant to be a community project. And the idea is that if we can get our community members, those that can give $20 to give 20, if we can get our municipalities to jump in, our foundations to give in, we really wanted this to be across the board community input and funding, because really it's great to raise $1 million and get the school here and restore it, but it's going to take community engagement in this project moving forward to make sure that we're able to continue to preserve it and that it continues to be a meaningful cultural resource for our community members. So the fundraising plan will continue as it has been, which is leveraged by our many community partners, as well as our champions and other supporters. And we've had several foundations who early on in the project said, let's see you get a little bit closer to the finish line and then we'll help you get over it. So we are now a little bit closer to that finish line. We are now reaching back out to some of those foundations who can really make those transformational gifts that will help us get over the finish line to $1 million. But $1 million will not be, that was one of the questions that came up in the survey was, is $1 million everything for in eternity for preserving and interpreting this building? And the answer is no. This is the initial fundraising effort to move the school, to bring it to our campus, to restore it, to open it to the public, and to launch those initial exhibits and initial programs that we'll do. But the very next step will be building an endowment for the building. So we're going to need operating funding. We're going to need staff members and lights and HVAC systems and all sorts of other maintenance that will go on, the very logistical things that will go on with the ongoing preservation of this building. So we will continue to fundraise for this building with our partners and with our city and our county, and continue to look to the community to show their support for this fundraising effort.
And we hope that as more people find, I'm getting a little feedback, but we hope as more people find the building and our project viable, I mean, the more people who know about it, we hope you join our efforts. I mean, we are very grateful for every penny that we get in support of this, and we recognize everybody who has supported this effort. We think it's very important for the community, and it's extremely important right now as we across the country look at our history and try to reckon with it and deal with it and understand it and learn from it. And I think this project serves that purpose very well for our community. So thank you for the people who've given, and thank you for the people who will give. And thank you, if you know of anybody who wants to give or you think might be a viable partner for us, please let us know.
And we continue to be inspired by the community of people, of working class people that pooled their resources to build this school for a better education, a brighter future for their children and their community. When we were, as we have been digging into archives and learning more about the school, we've uncovered records of people in Mecklenburg County, not just for this school, but really across the Southeast for the Rosenwald schools. People were mortgaging their future crops and their future livestock, saying that, I'll have this ready by the fall and I will mortgage this to support the funding of this school. So people were laying their livelihoods on the line for the education of their children, and very much that's what we are looking to the community now to do, to be a community effort to raise these funds so that this building and the people who it mattered to then and it matters to today, those stories can continue to be told here in Mecklenburg County. So some of the other questions I see coming in, where on the museum site will the building end up is one of the questions. So there have been several proposed locations for where the school will end up. And one of our preferences is for the building to be able to be seen from the road, from Shamrock. There's some logistical issues there with considering K-12 programming, which will be a big part of what we plan to do with the school once it's restored. So we want to keep the kids off the road and stay away from the noise. But one of the pieces of feedback that we often get from our community members is they see the metal sign out with the plaque out front that says, that talks about Alexander Rock House. And they see the museum building, the modern museum building, and they say, oh, I thought that plaque meant that's where history used to be. Like, that's how we're conditioned to think in this area, is that see one of those plaques, that's where something used to be, it's not there anymore, there's a new building there. Well, in fact, behind the Charlotte Museum of History here on Shamrock Drive, we are stewards of Mecklenburg County's oldest home site. It's a 1774 rock house, the last remaining home that relates to the Revolutionary War in our area. And so, history does live here, and the Siloam School will live here. And I think it's so important for our community members to be able to see it as they drive by, to know that this building is there, for it to get as much prominence on our landscape as possible. Also, while being sensitive to the historic landscape represented by the multiple structures of the Alexander Rock House, the spring house, the barn, the kitchen, multiple structures there in that cultural landscape. So all of that to say, that is still TBD. We are still working to select the architect who will do the site selection survey, and he will figure out, based on logistics like accessibility, access to water, to electricity, the distance from the road, all of those things will be factored in. But we do have preferences, our education staff, and just in terms of the thought process of where the building go, we have some preferences, and hope that it will be visible from the road.
Adrian, I see that you have a question that says, I think I'm getting feedback, but once the building is moved, will it be renovated to represent the way it was when it was a school? Could you just
Right.
a little bit on that too?
Sure, yes. It is a National Register historic site, and most of the time when you have a National Register building like this and you do a restoration project, you're going to see that it's going to be restored to what's called the period of historical significance. So for our school, the specific period of historical significance that landed this school on the National Register is the 1920s through the 1940s, when it was an active school for the Siloam community. It was a segregated school during the Jim Crow South. And the period of the 1920s through the 1940s is its period of historical significance. Now, because the Charlotte Museum of History really does feel it's important to present history as a continuum, while the restoration of the school will be sensitive to the 1920s to 1940s period, and the school will be restored with sensitivity to that, we're going to continue to interpret the period before the school was built. As Fanny mentioned, there was a log structure there that served as the school before the Rosenwald Plan School was put into place. So we'll talk about that history. We'll talk about the history of the school then becoming a residence and an auto mechanic shop, and then as it became vacant, and how it came to be moved to the Charlotte Museum of History. So we live in a continuum of history, and we will continue to tell the entire story of that school and the community before the school was built, and how it was used afterwards. But long story short, architecturally, when the school is restored, it will be restored to the 1920s appearance as it appeared when it was built in the 1920s.
And Adria, I had another question from the survey that asked about why move the school? Why move it from its current location?
Yes.
Restore it where it is. So you can comment a little bit about that. Like this. For people who visited where the school is now, you can see that it is very inaccessible. And you just comment a little bit more on that?
Sure. So I come from a very purist historic preservation background, and when at all possible, you don't want to move a historic resource from its original context. If it was at all, that's always the first choice, first question that we ask is, how can we preserve this in its original context? The Siloam School really is no longer in its original context. It's in its original location, but the context that has grown up around it is that of apartment complexes, mostly from the 1990s and 2000s era, and the landscape around it, including the church and many of the historic buildings that would have been around it, are just no longer there. It stands alone as a historic building in this landscape that it's in now. The other thing is that it's in an apartment complex, and we have the great fortune of working with tribute companies who recognized from the very beginning that this is a very significant historical resource. They worked to preserve it, but they are not a museum, and they are not public historians, and they want a local museum. They want their community to be able to access this. And so that was part of this initial idea for this partnership, was there's no parking there. There's no way a school bus could get to its current location. As I said, the apartment complex has grown up around it, and there's just no accessibility. There would be no restrooms, no electricity, that kind of thing. So moving it to our location will enable us to leverage our existing resources like the restrooms that we have here, which if you've ever done programming with small children, is very important, or really any groups of people. Bathrooms are important. It's the first thing people ask. So things like that, the resources that we have in the museum, and also really to be able to contextualize the story of the Siloam School in the larger context of Mecklenburg County's history. It's not just a point in time, but again, it's a part of the continuum of history that lands us to where we are today. So I hope that answered the question. I think about that. Any other thoughts there?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, the fact that it is right now not in its context, that it's very hard to access, and if you go there, I mean, you'll be struck by how well it is still in pretty good condition, but it has been in danger of being torn down. Whenever you have a historic building that's in a developing area, you always have the risk that you will lose that building. And we do not want to lose this building. We want to make sure that it lives on to tell the story for generations to come. And we think this is the best opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. As I said, that was always my first question. I think that was all of our, particularly working with the Historic Landmarks Commission, that's the first question, is how do we preserve it in place? And if not, where is the next best place? And fortunately, we have, we work with Aldersgate Retirement Community here to lease this 8 acres that we have here in East Charlotte. And that is a really unique opportunity to move a historic building to our location. So we're fortunate to be able to serve the community with this partnership.
I don't know whether we're getting any more, or we may be getting some more questions, but I will say this too while we access those other questions. I mean, one of the things we really want to do, and we hope you want to hear, is from the people who may have attended a Rosenwald school, and we obviously would love to hear from people who attended the Siloam School, and perhaps, I mean, if you know someone who attended a Rosenwald school, and provide us with their name and their information. We're looking to, have video recordings, just like the one you saw today, talking about having relatives who attended a Rosenwald school, and the impact and the legacy of those Rosenwald school. Or, it doesn't really even have to be a Rosenwald school exactly, but a lot of the rural schools that were built for African Americans were built by church communities. And of course, the Siloam School was built in a church community. And the log school that was built there started out as part of that church community. And the children who attended the school were part of that community also. So we would love to hear those stories, and we would love to include them in the telling of the story of education of African Americans in the early 1920s, the early part of that century.
Absolutely. And we have a comment here from Eric and Nancy Johnson, who have contributed to this project, and we're so glad to hear from you today. They said, we will bring this project to the attention of the Unity in Community of North Mecklenburg, a community-based organization devoted to racial equity. I'm sure that they will advertise it with their supporters. We'll get back to you if the leadership is open to a short presentation at one of their meetings. So we would love to connect. Please do reach back out to us. We absolutely want to really do as much friend raising on this project as possible. As I mentioned, it's all well and good to restore a building and to open it up to the public, but it's going to take long-term generational commitment to make sure that 100 years from today, this building is still standing and still serving its community. So still informing us, right? Still educating us.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you for all of the advocacy that we see out in the community. Even if you just share this event, share a link to the project on your social media. There's so many ways that you can elevate this story and help us get over that fundraising goal to move and restore the school.
Well, Adria, I see about how will the school be moved? Can it be moved in one piece, or will it have to be partially dismantled? I don't
Yes.
want to get into our plans for the grand celebration, the moving, but tell them a little bit about how this will happen.
Yes, this is actually very exciting for a couple of different reasons. So again, I'm a purist when it comes to historic preservation. I don't want to see a building have to get disassembled if we don't have to. It becomes a logistical nightmare, and it just, you know, the lightest touch is always the right approach to historic preservation. So we are pleased to be working with, I mentioned, tribute companies. They are the current owners of the building. They own the land and the apartments that have grown up around it, and we'll be donating the building. In addition, they will be donating the moving services that will be needed, which will be a pretty impressive architectural feat that will be done in consultation with the historic architect that will be selected to carry out this project. And so far, from the movers that they have spoken with, from what we understand, the building will be able to be moved almost in its entirety. So it won't need to be pieced out too much. The length and the width of the building, they feel will be fine to move in its entirety. What is probably going to need to happen is that the height is an issue based on the routes that we'll have to take. And so some of the roof rafters and parts of the roof will have to be removed and reassembled when they're here. But frankly, when we first looked at it, we said, ooh, are we going to have to, you know, this is 3 lanes wide and we're on a 2-lane road here in East Charlotte. So we're not sure at first what the logistics might look like, but so far so good. We think we're going to be able to keep it pretty well intact. Minus some roof rafters and the roofing pieces that will need to be pulled off and reassembled once they're here. So I'm very excited to see that move as well, because we do think that will garner national attention for the project. We think visually seeing the school itself moving will be very much an emotional and impactful event, and hopefully again we'll bring a lot of our community members together to recognize and honor this history. So it looks like we got some other folks who say they're going to share some information, and we are really glad to hear that. Please keep the questions coming as we look at our comments here tonight. Some of the other survey feedback that we wanted to share was as Fanny mentioned, is that people really want to know more about the students, and people want to hear more about the teachers and the people that were in this community that supported this school. And as Fanny mentioned, we are seeking to hear from alumni and their descendants. So please do reach out to us and help us collect this information and be able to share it with the public. We're fortunate to be able to work with some oral history specialists at UNC Charlotte's Atkins Library to be able to capture these stories and memories and share them with the public, be able to archive them through Atkins Library. So we will actually be doing some of our very first oral history interviews around this project through the museum and UNC Charlotte next week. And we are just so excited to be able to uplift these stories and elevate these voices, which, you know, really had just not been captured until this time. So I'm really glad to be moving forward with that. People also really wanted to hear more about the community. So people want to know, how did a rural farming community support education for their children? How was the school built? And what did the community do to support the school? And then the general community history, because if you've been around UNC Charlotte area recently, I attended UNC Charlotte as an undergrad, and it's not the same place it was 20 years ago. So it's certainly not in the landscape that the folks from the Siloam community would recognize from 100 years ago. And I think that'll be an important part of telling that story, is what that area looked like, what the community looked like, the businesses and families and genealogy and individual stories that all tell the bigger picture of really what this school meant to Mecklenburg County in the 1920s and 30s and 40s.
And I will add, as a personal observation, that one of my relatives attended a Rosenwald school, and she talked about attending a Rosenwald school, and she talked about the community that rallied around the students in her area, and how they were so fixed on providing a better education for their kids, and how that the way that they approached education kind of stuck with her all those years. And for many people who attended these schools, I mean, Rosenwald has been a legacy that has reaped grand rewards all across the country. Many of the people have gone on to stellar educational achievements and other kinds of achievements. And all of that is part of the story of rural education for African Americans back in the 1920s. The affiliation with the churches is also a point that is a great observation about how African Americans got educated back in the 1920s. I mean, there are a lot of things to learn from the experience of what the students and the people in those areas had during those times. So I'm just excited about it. I've been doing some family history, and I have been studying the time of the 1920s. And a lot of what we think about what was happening in those times, some of it is true, obviously, but there is just a larger view of what was happening during those times. The people were trying to achieve, and they were working toward that, and they were doing things that you probably would not think of them doing back in that time when they were really struggling against racial oppression and financial challenges, but they were really fixed and working toward a goal. So it's very interesting just to look at that part of history. And I'm just fascinated with learning more about the people and the times in which they lived.
Absolutely. I think one of the most exciting moments for us was when we first revealed some of the names of the teachers. So I think we now have 3 names of teachers from Siloam School. And, you know, as we're talking about whose names we uplift in our community, whose names we put on our buildings and our road signs, I can think of 3 women whose names could be on road signs here in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, and could be on buildings. If you talk about that, I think we talk about the theme of resistance and persistence being a theme in the continuum of African American history in Mecklenburg County. These women really represent resistance and persistence, and the impact that they had on the community. When you hear it from the words of someone like Rochelle Brandon, who is a decorated physician here in Mecklenburg County, and attributes that to her grandmother's education in a Rosenwald school, this is very, very impactful.
Yeah.
So let's check and see if we have some other survey questions. I can tell you that one of the themes that came out is that like our partners committee, the public who has spoken to us so far has said that they really believe that educational avenues are important, but K-12 particularly. And one respondent even said, field trips are the most important. They should be mandatory for CMS students. So we agree. We think field trips are going to be a huge part of what we hope to accomplish with education out of this space. It's a big part of what we already do with the museum K-12 education, and I think it will be a huge part of what this project will do to serve the community moving forward. So look forward to hearing from our educators, from our students. We also had the good fortune of working with UNC Charlotte's history department, where some of their students did research on the school and provided some suggestions for exhibits and programs that we might do as we open the school up to the public. So those educational synergies and partnerships will be very important to us, to helping us inform how the project can best serve our educators and our students here in Mecklenburg County and our surrounding areas.
Adria, do you have from Christina about putting out a call for photographs of the Mallet Creek area in the early part of the 20th century to evoke the rural context of the school and the Siloam community? She's asking if we have. Sounds like a good idea, but have we?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and thank you, Tina, for putting that question forward. I think that we have sort of done that, but when you say it exactly like that, it makes me think maybe we should put out a press release that does exactly that, that requests, photographic archives. That's certainly what we've been doing as we are talking to alumni and descendants of this community, requesting that we are able to capture photographs, archives, artifacts, anything that may connect to this history. So thank you for that great suggestion. Maybe our PR team needs to think about how we can put out a public appeal to help capture some of these materials as well.
Yes.
So a spin-off kind of question that came off of the K-12 discussion is there a committee, including current K-12 teachers, in planning for an educational field trip immersive engaging experience? Are you engaging students for their feedback to inform the plans and programming to consider student interests? So we do currently have CMS educators as part of our community partners committee. We don't yet have a committee strictly of educators to plan our educational field trip experiences, but I think that's a great idea. And certainly our arms are wide open to educators who want to help inform and shape this project. Because again, it's here to serve the community, to serve our students, to serve our educators. So by all means, please do reach out to us. Please do become part of our community partners. And there is certainly an opportunity for educators to shape the project. So I mentioned, are we engaging students to inform their feedback? We mentioned that we worked with the UNC Charlotte History Department, and we'll continue to engage with our local educators, and hope to hear from you, hope to hear from more.
And I'll just put a plug for us, for people to visit the exhibit that you have behind you. I mean, you can actually kind of get an immersive experience of being inside a classroom that would have been in the Siloam School. The exhibit that's underway now, I think it goes on at least until the end of the year, I think. It's very worth going into if you want to really kind of see what it was like, not being able to right now go into the building itself because it's not in great shape, but you can see from this exhibit, a wonderful exhibit that the museum has going right now.
Hope everyone will come check that out. We are open on Saturdays, and this exhibit is part of your general admission. If you do come see the exhibit, you can also access the 360 tour. So we do have a 360 virtual tour of the school, which has been put together to help people get into that space virtually until we are physically, and according to our insurance company, able to bring people safely into that space. So I really do hope everyone will come out and check out the exhibit. Reach out to us, tell us your stories, your thoughts, your questions, and help us direct this energy back to the community. Right, and so thank you for noting that. So this is something we really hope that we'll get some community spread, some word of mouth on this. The Truist Foundation has recently awarded a grant to the museum to offer free field trips to CMS students with that 360 tour and virtual guidebook that we have developed for the Siloam School. So we are now, for this fall, able to book for free for any CMS students or classrooms for free of charge to do the Inside Siloam School virtual tour. That comes with one of our educators, an hour of one of our educators' time to be able to speak to the students, to answer their questions, to engage in dialogue, and to go through the guidebook and the 360 tour. So a big thanks to the Truist Foundation for helping us support that. This is one of a series of grants that we have received because we're in East Charlotte, and our local schools here are not the most affluent schools in Mecklenburg County. And a few years ago, we started to realize sometimes we're starting to see only charter schools here and some of the more affluent schools here. And it's because they're, the field trip experiences, they cost money. And so we started reaching out to our local schools and said, look, what can we do here? We really want to make sure that our schools across Mecklenburg County, but particularly in East Charlotte, are having equitable access to these essentially foundational experiences, right? Like these are experiences that these children never forget. It's how they identify with Charlotte, with the identity and the legacy and the history of Charlotte, with their own place in that history and identity. And it becomes this formative experience for children. So we really want to make sure everyone has equitable access to it. So with donations from the Weatherspoon Foundation, from Ross and Michelle Annable, most recently from the Truist Foundation, and also from the Charlotte Women's Club. We have been able to serve now for several years our local schools either free of charge or through subsidized field trip experiences. So hope our local supporters will continue to support that. And for this fall, please spread the word. The Truist Foundation has enabled us to support our local schools with free field trips, free virtual field trips, since we're virtual with CMS for this fall.
Well, are we coming to the end of our time?
I think so. Yep. I think we're coming up to the end here. I've really appreciated all of the questions that we have had in here, and hope you will continue to feed us your thoughts, your questions, your aspirations for what this cultural resource will be as a community resource. Let's see if you have any other questions. We might be able to sneak one or two more in. Please do continue to reach out to us. And let me see if there was any other feedback points that we thought it was important to share this evening. I will also point out that this is the first in a series of public engagement sessions. Future sessions will be more focused on listening. So really, again, just want to hear from the community. This initial session, I think, was more framing the project and more of an informational session. But we do look forward to future community listening sessions, so there will be future opportunities. So if you don't already follow the project, make sure you sign up for our e-newsletters, follow us on social media, and continue to follow this project, and tell your friends and let people know that we want to hear from them. So I hear one more question in here. Is anyone from Davidson College involved? At this moment, no, we don't have anyone affiliated with Davidson College, but there's the connection right there. Yep, Anthony Fox is a champion of this project, former Charlotte mayor and transportation secretary, has just joined our champions as he worked with us on a project recently, and willing to advocate for this project, for the Safe Siloam School project. So, but always looking for more connections to our educational resources, our higher ed, K-12. You know, that's really at the core of what we do. At the core of our mission is education. So, you know, connections to our educators are always very important. So thank you for reaching out. Alfreda mentions Boris Henderson. Alfreda, thank you for being here today. I won't call you out personally, but Alfreda is a special guest to the museum, and who has recently reached out to us and helped us connect so many important pieces of the history of the Siloam School. Thank you for being here and for being a part of this. Boris Henderson is with the Aldersgate Retirement Community and serves as the liaison for our Partners Committee, and that is another great connection for us. So let's see, any other questions, please pop them in the chat. In the meantime, I will just say that we are very grateful for your feedback, your ideas, and all the questions that you've shared with us. We'll continue to do these surveys, and you will see a survey that will pop up in your browser at the end of this program. So tonight's program was recorded and it will be posted on the museum's channels, and that link will also be emailed to you if you attended this program tonight. So we hope you'll continue to stay engaged with the project and with the Charlotte Museum of History. If you'd like to get involved with the Safe Siloam School project, you can send us an email at the address on the screen, or you can give us a call at 704-568-1774. You can donate to the project at charlottemuseum.org/Siloam. And as Fanny said, every dollar counts. So yes. Thank you for giving as generously as you can and supporting this project. And you can also read a more in-depth history of the school and the Safe Siloam School Project Committee on our website there at that address you see on the screen. So thank you again, Fanny, as always, for being my co-host, for being our fearless project leader, for advocating for this important resource. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to work with you. So thank you all for being here and have a great night.
Thank you.